Good morning, crew. Welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show. My name is Dr. Sarah Heron, and I'm here on Fitness Athlete Friday. Before we get started, I want to send a huge congratulations to the crew on the announcement of Onward Physical Therapy. We're just thrilled to see that happen. And as we wrap up our current cohort for the out-of-network division and get ready to launch into that July cohort, please know that if that has piqued your interest a little bit, that out-of-network space, there's plenty of space in that July course, and we just love to have you. So today I am on the podcast and I want to talk about body image in CrossFit. So this is something that can be a little bit of a touchy subject for people, and I am going to drop some uncomfortable information. I'm probably going to highlight some things that make people feel a little bit nervous. I really want to talk about how we can live authentically and how that can help our clients in this situation. And I'm also going to go ahead and talk about the feedback that I got from others. So I did reach out to a lot of the staff, especially the fitness athlete crew. I also reached out to other practitioners in the area that I know in the out-of-network space or in the physical therapy space in general. And then finally, I opened up my survey to CrossFit athletes and coaches that I know. I surveyed both men and women. Not surprisingly to many, much of the feedback that I received was from women. So you'll see me glancing down a little bit. I'm just going to be referencing some of the quotes that I got from other people. But first, I'm going to tell you my personal story. So I want to be really vulnerable in this moment because the reason that we're talking about this stuff is that this may in fact exist in your clientele. Especially if you guys are working with CrossFit athletes, it is assumed that everyone is living this like really healthful lifestyle, and that may not be the case behind the scenes. And so as people who see these athletes and clients very regularly, probably more regularly than their physician, and we sometimes can glean information more so than their friends and family. We just want to have this information in the back of our head so that we can use it as needed. Okay, so today what I want to talk about, I am going to talk about my personal experience. I'm going to share with you the general feedback that I received from the other practitioners and coaches and athletes. And then I want to talk about what we can be aware of in the CrossFit space or in the athlete space in general, kind of the good, the not good. And then finally, we're going to talk about body shaming and living authentically and how those sort of go together. I would love feedback on this topic. You certainly do not need to share your personal story if you don't want to, but opening that up as a safe space to do that, the ICE community is going to be really, really grateful for that information and also very, very accepting of that. And I think we can all learn a lot from talking about this. I would expect that this is a conversation that becomes a continuum. Okay, so I won't go too much into the details of my life story, but I did suffer from an eating disorder. It actually started, I was a very, very small child struggling with eating behavior from the age of 2. So this is something that was like genetically ingrained in me. I have a lot of anxiety, and that's just part of that was environment growing up. But there's a history of eating disorders in my family. And so it was likely inevitable that that would happen for me. Now, as a kid, it wasn't really labeled that way. I definitely struggled with eating anything, and my parents really, really suffered with that more so than other children. But at the time, this is in the early 80s, nothing was really done for me from a counseling perspective or addressing the issues that were really happening. When I was 11, I had been dancing for 8 years at that point, and I started actively choosing not to eat. So this continued for years. I was very small. I'm tall, but I just looked like a ballerina, right? And so nobody knew that when they dropped me off at ballet class after school, that my dinner that had been packed for me literally just got tossed in the garbage. I didn't eat anything. I would come home from ballet, hungry, and I would eat like random stuff, like pickles. I would squirt mustard on like anything that was low calorie. I wanted it, but I was hungry, so I was just eating like nasty like combinations of things. So fast forward, like I said, I don't want to dwell on this too much, but I think it's interesting to just look at somebody who is perceived as pretty healthy and pretty mentally sound, and see that there's a long, long, long history there. And I think that that's probably more common than we realize. So fast forward, I went to college. It's really easy to get caught up in what's going on there. And I continued to struggle. When I got too skinny and my friends were really worried and threatening to call my parents and all of this stuff was happening, I decided to switch from not eating at all to throwing my food up. Of course, that's pretty common because you can kind of get away with it a little bit easier. I used tricks like chewing and spitting, which is something you may not be aware of, and is really disgusting. So that it's really hard for me to be real about that because those are behaviors that we certainly don't think about happening outside of like college, high school, maybe. But I still have tendencies to think in those directions. I don't partake in that anymore, and I've had a lot of counseling, and certainly CrossFit has done a really good job of helping me like move toward a different mindset, but it's kind of always there for me. So the way that CrossFit helped me the most, obviously I left the dance world, but I'm not going to blame the dance world on my history with food. I certainly think that there's some family components. There's definitely environment components for me, social. But CrossFit was a way for me, once I was out of that world, to look at other women, especially, and be like, oh my God, I want to do that. That looks so cool. She's so strong. She's so awesome. I aspire to be like her. And then not to worry so much about what the number on the scale was or what I looked like or how many ribs I could count, all these crazy metrics that we were using. And I certainly stopped counting calories. Now, that took a lot of counseling. So I think that some of the stories that I heard were really similar, that they have the kind of dark past of history of eating disorders. Now, I will say the general feedback that I got is that people who were involved in athletics at a young age didn't struggle as much with body image as much as they struggled with being really good at their sport. So I think that that's, again, like we see that in CrossFit, and I think that that's awesome. So this is something to be really, really encouraged by. Additionally, I won't mention any other names except for this one, but Alan gave me permission. So Alan, our COO of ICE, told me, and many of you guys know this, he has lost a significant amount of weight through CrossFit and diet, right, and healthy lifestyle choices. So we see that has been a really positive for him. Now, I will say that then the feedback I got from people was once they got into sort of the habit of CrossFit and they've lost some weight, or they're feeling more like mentally driven by athletics and not by weight or numbers on the scale, then what was happening is they were feeling like they weren't muscular enough. They weren't fit enough. They, maybe the women didn't feel feminine enough. Now, because now they have like these bulky muscles. I know that I feel like I don't look like a CrossFitter. It's harder for me to put on muscle, probably because my metabolism is really jacked up from years and years of not eating. So my body just goes, hold on to everything. Maybe. I just don't, I'm like a lean muscled person. So I want to look like a CrossFitter though. But maybe I won't ever. Right. And so where do we kind of draw the line there in terms of like what that thinking should be? What should it be? I don't know. So again, general feedback was that CrossFit was super helpful. And I think that that's one thing that we need to be aware of. Like, as we are in a community of people who are really supportive of CrossFit, really supportive of fitness in general, athletics in general, and living this healthy lifestyle of diet and exercise. right? As we're trying to promote that in our culture, we need to remember that this is one of the positives. So when people are arguing with us about it, a little bit of mechanical shoulder pain is better than diabetes, right? So having established healthy habits through aspiring to be a certain way in the gym, or to put a certain weight on the bar, or do a certain thing on the rings, those are better goals than what's the number on the scale. In fact, my current weight is about 8 pounds heavier than the weight that I probably wanted to kill myself at, right? That was my forever, no, you'll never hit that weight. And I'm heavier now. So the number's not hard for me anymore. And I think that was a theme that I saw. The number wasn't hard anymore. Now it's more about body image. So why is this an issue? Why does this continue to be an issue even for athletes? Well, I think, and I'm going to reference some of what I heard from people here. I think sometimes it comes down to what we're seeing in our environments and what we're seeing on social media, right? So yes, there is a culture that we have shifted away from, which is the fat shaming culture. We've gotten away from that. And now there's a lot more this, all body types are good. That's fine. But that's tricky because we are health promoting, right? So not all of those body types are living a healthy lifestyle. That doesn't make their body type something that we need to shame, but we need to talk about health, right? But it's very layered and it's very gray and it's very hard for patients to see the difference there. So we need to be really careful with that. As we're trying to help people with their fitness and their health, are we then making them feel bad about their body? And are we getting ourselves into this cycle of body shaming? Okay, so, and it can go both ways. So a lot of you guys saw the Instagram post with Amanda Barnhart. She's our hero now. So she is a pretty legit CrossFitter. She happens to be a physical therapist too, which is awesome. And her image, her body, her picture was used from, I think it was a competition. She had dumbbells in her hands and she was doing a step up and all of her muscles are popping and she looks freaking gorgeous. Okay, so her image without her permission was taken by a athletic group. I won't say what it was, but it was a fitness studio brand. And they used her image to say, you don't want to look like this, right? We won't make you look like that through our type of exercise. So now we're taking what a lot of CrossFitters are saying, oh my gosh, I want to look like her, and saying that's not okay either. So nothing is okay now. Now we can't be fat. We can't be too skinny. We can't be muscular. We can't, all of it, right? And this goes for men too. So we see this pinnacle of what we should be looking like, but what is that and why is that? Instead, should we be looking at the health pinnacle? Yes, we should be, but as a culture, we're not there yet. So we just need to be aware of this, right? So Beth, my colleague, and I were chatting about this, and we both said, oh my gosh, I feel because I'm in the eyes of all these other athletes as a coach, not only do I feel shitty sometimes when I'm I can't do that, or I can't do that anymore. I'm 36 years old. My body doesn't want to do that anymore. And I don't look like that. So does that make me a bad coach because other people look better than me in the gym, and here's that mindset, right? So it's just, there's no answers here. There's no clear resolution to this issue. This is just all food for thought. Okay. I want you to be considerate of what we are looking at and how that might affect your CrossFitters. And I'm using them as an example, but any athlete. Distance runners have a history of eating behavior difficulty. In fact, one of the CrossFit athletes that I got feedback from was a track athlete in college. So she did short distances, and she said that the long distance runners used to comment on how her thighs rubbed together, and that was weird. And I remember as a dancer being oh my gosh, I never ever could have my thighs touch. But now as a CrossFitter, my thighs do touch. And if I had an ankle injury a few years ago and lost a lot of strength in that one leg, and my poor little adductor and quad were just disintegrating, and I was pissed about that. So yeah, I still have body image issues even if they're more healthy. Okay. So I don't know. I don't know what we should be thinking, but we need to be aware that this is what our patients are thinking, or our clients. Okay. I also think it's important to note that if you are working with CrossFitters and if they do or don't have a history of this, they need to be eating to perform. So eating for aesthetics and following macros is different than eating for performance and following macros. So we can still be very dialed in with our nutrition and really plugged into how much we really need to maintain what our bodies want. But we need to be aware that when we start cutting a lot of fat and cutting a lot of carbs, the performance can suffer as an athlete. And so neurologically, that's going to have an impact. Musculoskeletally, that's going to have an impact, right? Our recovery is going to require that energy. And so these are just things that we can check in with our patients. When we say, like, how is your nutrition? Get in a little bit deeper. Okay. So, lastly, I want to talk about the images that we see on social media mostly and how we perceive that. And I've talked about this a little bit in chats I've done with other women in this fitness space. I used to be really hung up on like not really liking the booty short sports bra culture. I think it really, and maybe that's because I came from a leotard culture where we were looking at each other for that purpose. I don't feel comfortable enough with my body to do that. Maybe that's problematic. It certainly is something I am aware of. Now I'm like, that girl can do whatever she wants, right? But that means that we don't get to then, in our heads, body shame the girl that's got booty shorts on and cellulite. Okay, she also gets to wear that, right? We all get to wear what we want to wear and not be judged for it. So this often isn't happening vocally. It's not always happening like in text, right? Those people are assholes. But everybody does a little bit of body shaming, and it may not be toward others, but it could be toward yourself. So I'm super duper guilty of this, and I'm going to work really hard to stop, because as soon as I wrote this down as I was prepping this talk, I thought that is bullshit. So I send, with my friends, we like DM back and forth all the time these stupid memes about like how fat we are and how we're living this like unhealthy lifestyle of donuts and wine. And it's not true. But the one in particular that I got the other day was like, question mark, how's your diet going? Answer. And it's like a picture of a car window with a piece of paper taped to it that says, don't park close, I'm fat. And it's funny, but it's not true. So it's egregiously not true. I can get out of my car. Second, are we saying that that's not okay if somebody is struggling with weight and they can't get out of their car? That's exactly what we're saying. Okay, so we're fat shaming ourselves and other people. And we're saying that that's not ideal. Now, from a health standpoint, no, it's not ideal, but we just need to be careful with the messaging that we're sending. So that's where I want us to really think about living an authentic life. So I'm going to work really hard to practice what I preach. I think we do a really good job of that in general, but this is going to probably irritate some people. I am actively not going to be drinking a certain energy drink. Okay. The reason for this is I don't think that people need that much caffeine. I don't think that we need to be promoting something that on Instagram is full of bikinied models. And that's it. That's all that they have to market to me. That is annoying to me. That is kind of using women in a way that I don't like. And I understand that's their branding. And I also know that there's lots of other companies that do that. And I'm not saying I'm going to be perfect. I'm also not asking you guys to not drink certain things. But in my effort to live authentically, I am not going to partake in that. And I'm going to stop sending these memes back and forth with people. Okay, so how do we move forward from this? I think the biggest thing is just awareness. Asking your patients if they have this history, or if there's any anything that you can kind of pick up on, especially as you're working with dancers and people who come from weight-controlled sports. That includes Olympic lifting, right? So sometimes it's for performance, and then sometimes we can kind of get caught up in these habits. So happy to chat more about this if you guys have questions or comments, concerns, smart remarks. But I hope that resonates a bit. I hope that settles in, and I hope that you can kind of think about ways in which you can live a little bit more authentically, practicing what you preach, right? And I also think at the end of the day, 5 pounds of fun is fine. Okay, have a great weekend. I apologize for taking up so much time, and we'll talk soon. Take care.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.